4 years or so, and seeing the growth potential that they have, and seeing more CrossFitters start to get into powerlifting. Because let's face it, CrossFit is really, really hard. Not that powerlifting isn't hard, but CrossFitters are asked to do a tremendous amount of different things, and it becomes really, really demanding. And so a lot of them will jump into weightlifting a little bit more, or maybe they'll get into powerlifting a little bit more. If you cannot lift fucking weights while I'm talking, that would be fucking awesome. Anyway, sorry about that. Sometimes it happens. I have Tourette's syndrome. I have ADHD, HIV, LMNOP, and I'm wearing a G-string. You do the math on that. But anyway, I want you guys to be as positive as you can be. And some of you guys might be new, so being positive is not hard when you're new. Being positive as you grow older in the sport, or in any sport, or you get around other people, after a while, you're not always so happy. You're not always so happy about the guy doing curls when you're trying to get into the squat rack. But I want you guys to try to be positive and be more accepting of other people, because we need more people in this sport. We need more competitors. We need more people to run competition. And that's why I'm here today, is because we had Bart and Gio up in Sacramento at my house and at my gym and stuff, and we just got talking and said, it'd be great if you guys just ran some sort of event. Just anything, just to get your feet wet, just to run an event, get people excited about powerlifting. It doesn't have to be a traditional powerlifting meet, just some sort of test of strength of some sort. And so that's what we're doing here today. We got done with the seminar portion of me talking about nothing for about an hour and you guys falling asleep. You guys will have a chance, those of you that entered, to do some bench pressing. First thing that we're going to show you today is we're going to start talking about some squats. And the first thing you need to know about any of these lifts, again, just kind of reverts back to what I always try to preach to everybody and nobody ever wants to really fucking hear, is you have to be positive and you have to get around like-minded people. You have to find other people that can make a big difference in your life. I was lucky enough to have a brother that taught me how to powerlift. So how fucking fortunate am I? But I also found a wife who's very supportive with powerlifting. My best friend over here, Jesse Burdick, has gone as far to marry one of the hottest CrossFitters out there, Katie Hogan, to have a good support system with her. It is really fucking important that you guys embrace that and that you guys understand the simple fact that either you're in or you're in the fucking way. People are either into what you're doing or they're not. Be good to the people that are good to you and try your best to do nothing else. I know what you're thinking is like, why the fuck does that have anything to do with bench, squat, or deadlift? But just trust me when I tell you that has everything to do with it. Because the more that you can focus in on what you're going to do, the more successful you're going to be. Someone like John Cena, I'll name drop a little bit here. He's been a good friend of mine for a long time. What that guy does that's different than everybody else is actually not different than anything anybody else does. He does the same thing over and over again, consistently, and he doesn't take any bullshit from anybody. And he also just doesn't get involved in any bullshit. He's good to the people that are good to him, and he doesn't do anything else. He stays extremely positive. And now he's making millions of dollars doing stuff that he loves to do. So when it comes to all this stuff, it's extremely important that you guys find a good support system. If you're currently lifting with someone that complains about their knee all the time, or their hip, then you got to get that guy in check, or that girl in check. You got to make sure that that person is on board with getting better just as much as you are. So we got Silent Mike over here, who's going to hit up a squat if he's still over here. I don't know if he's gotten cold or not. Might have gotten a little chilly. Silent Mike's got 405 on the bar. And we got Katie, who has warmed up to about 225. This weight represents about 80% of Mike's max, give or take a couple lbs. He's just doing some doubles for the day. So you can't really tell people's form that well when they just have a broomstick on their back or just a barbell on their back. You need to have some sort of actual weight on their back. It's also important that whenever anybody's starting to get into doing any sort of weight, anything that's a challenge to them, that you protect yourself a little bit. Use protection, kids. Protect yourself before you wreck yourself. Protect yourself before you have pain. Protect yourself before you have a fucking baby. Throw on a belt. Throw on knee sleeves. You're not Superman. There's no reason to try to be a hero with it. If something hurts, try to protect it, okay? Take the time that you need to take. And then always just use a spotter. You can have a guy on each side or someone just from the back. So try to pay attention to some of the things he's doing. Before he even squatted, he did a good job of setting the bar up on his back, and now he's going to get into his squat. Mike leans forward just a little bit on the squat, but the torso position doesn't change a whole lot, and he's getting a good, nice push from the bottom. Now you notice that his stance, I would consider his stance to be fairly narrow. You're also going to notice that he's in a flat shoe. Some of you may prefer an Olympic lifting shoe. For now, it seems like a lot of the people in here are fairly new, or maybe only been doing it for a year or 2 or even 3 years. That's still new to me. Go with what's comfortable. People talk a lot about high bar and low bar. Try not to worry about it a ton. Find a spot that's comfortable and try to ride that out. If it hurts your shoulder or hurts your elbow, find a different position to put the bar in. Or wrap your elbow up with something. Or fuck your elbow even, if you can reach it. So now we have Katie Hogan, who's going to do a squat. Whoa! Katie Hogan just broke the squat rack. So now Katie's got the bar a little higher. She's going to do 3 reps because she's a lot stronger than Mike. There you go, Katie. Good. So the technique wasn't too much different, but Katie was a little bit more upright, whereas Mike was leaning forward a little bit more. Mike had the bar much lower than where she had it. So when you have the bar higher, the barbell is going to push you down in a straight line more. And so you'll actually be able to, for most of you, you'll be able to achieve getting lower with the bar higher. Bar higher, Olympic lifting shoes, a lot of times you'll be able to get lower. A wider stance, the wider out you go, the more tension you're going to create on the hips. We're going to have Mike go again, and just I'll kind of talk you through some of the setup that he's doing here. So the first thing that you want to do before you even get underneath the barbell is you want to try to start to think about how am I going to organize my body against the amount of weight that is on the bar? How am I going to get myself in a solid position and maintain that solid position throughout the entire range of motion? That's what powerlifting is really about, is trying to find a position that you can ride with and maintain it throughout an entire range of motion. If you're trying to do some weird type of form that you see somebody else do who's super mobile, or maybe just gifted at powerlifting, maybe they're super strong, odds of you being able to maintain that positioning throughout the entire lift are extremely low. If you're trying to arch up real hard and do all these crazy things, have your head way up and stuff like that, a lot of times your body's going to counteract and end up in a completely opposite position to that. You'll be rounding over, knees will be caving in, and you'll look like you're thrown up into a toilet. So here we got Mike going underneath the bar. Mike gets his hands kind of close together, which helps solve the problem of trying to figure out how to get yourself tight. The closer your hands are, the tighter the position is going to be, really. You don't have to think about it a ton. He's got the bar a little bit lower than his traps, kind of on his rear delts. And now he's just trying to keep his stomach tight, bracing his stomach for like a punch. He's forcing the knees out, driving the hips back a little bit, squatting down. There you go. We'll have Katie hit up another squat. They're doing a little bit of a squat off. They didn't really realize it was going to happen like this. So now Katie's going without a belt, so she's got some more things to think about. When you're not wearing a lifting belt, you got to try to organize your body to be even more solid and even stronger. When it comes to form and technique, you don't want to lift like a pussy and lift with really light weights all the time, but you do need to be able to execute the lift the right way. the amount of weight that these guys have on the bar is a really, really good start. This is a good starting weight towards getting stronger. Like this would look like week 1 of maybe 3 or 4 weeks of adding a little bit of weight to the bar. Because when she's squatting, even though we were at the CrossFit Games all day, she's probably normally quite a bit stronger than this even, but when you're squatting, there should be like, or benching or deadlifting, there should be a tiny bit of deviation from what you're actually really trying to do. So when you go back and watch it, you're like, oh, that wasn't quite as good as I thought it was. When you go back and watch it, or you have a coach tell you, yeah, you rounded over a little bit, and you're like, you're full of shit. And you watch the video, and of course, there you are, rounding over a little bit. That's actually not a bad thing. But you have to try to figure out where that line is. I've gotten to the point where I've actually done a workout, and I got done with the sets, and I'm like, I kind of felt myself get stronger right then and there. Because I strained through the lift just enough, but I didn't get into a bad enough position that I'll never recover from the workout. Here we go, get them fired up. Yell at them, kick them, punch them, whatever you gotta do.
That's all they got?
Yeah, they're letting me get ready. They want to see the process.
Let's go, solid Mike.
Come on, Mike, here we go. Let's go. Come on, get in there now. Count it out now, here we go. I'll get a couple reps in there, Mike.
Here we go.
Here we go, 1, yep.
Yeah.
Good, 2.
Yeah.
Come on.
Come on.
That's it.
3. There you go. Good, Mike. 4. Yep. Let's go. Good, pushing that bar. 5 reps. There you go. Good. He's gonna go for it. Get him.
Come on.
6. Come on. Keep going. 7. Yep.
Come on.
Come on now. Here we go. 8 reps. Here we go. 8 reps. Yep. Nice.
There you go.
I wanted you guys to see that because I wanted you guys to see when someone starts to get into some of these kind of faulty positions. That's still okay to get into those positions, but as a newer lifter, you have to be very careful how often that happens to you. Or even as a more advanced lifter. If you're somebody that wants to do CrossFit or someone that wants to play football or do these other things, how effective are you going to be? Like how effective is going to be the next day if he did like 3 or 4 sets like that, where he just continually was like rounding over and stuff like that. So you got to be really careful of how many times you round over in a given workout. Can I have Katie do 1 more set? Let's see her do 5 reps, huh? Might as well. Fuck it. It's not me doing it, right? Come on, Katie. There we go. Now look how easy that first one now. She knows she's got to do 5. Come on, Katie. There you go. 3. Yep.
Let's do it.
Easy.
Last one, blow up.
There we go. Good. Easy.
It's like the most applause we'll ever get for any lift you ever did.
Some common mistakes we see in the squat
I did 10 last week.
are that people will lead with their knees. Hey guys, if you're gonna talk and you just go outside, whoever the fuck's talking, I can't hear, I can't concentrate. So just fucking leave if you're gonna fucking talk. Or come over here and receive a punch in the face. Alright, so a lot of times I see people leading with their knees and their knees are shooting forward. And that's something you want to try to avoid. Your strength is just going to be limited that way and you can also get hurt. Yep. We have Katie demo as she tears her patella tendon off for us.
Just for you.
People kind of lead with their knees and they won't shoot their butt back at all. So the correct way to fix that, and as a coach, to cue that, is to tell the person to push their hips back a little bit and then start to drop down into their squat. Now at the same time, we're not just trying to lead the whole exercise with our butt, because otherwise she'll just end up leaning over and doing a good morning the whole time, which that's going to hurt really bad too. So we want to simultaneously kick the hips back. As the hips go back, the knees are going to start to activate and go forward a little bit, and you're going to drop down into your squat. Go ahead and rack it. So if we had to just remember a couple of things about the squat, 1 is we're trying to keep our stomach tight. 2 is we're trying to force our hips back. As Ed Cohn liked to say, we're opening up our taint. And the reason why he said that, and it's actually more brilliant than it sounds, is because forever people were talking about forcing out the knees, and the conversation actually starts a lot higher up than that. Your knees don't really go in or out too much. It's actually your hip that's kind of activating that. And so what he's talking about is kind of pitching your butt back a little bit and forcing your knees out at the same time. Your knees do have to travel forward a little bit in squat, especially for some of you guys that like to get down really low. So we're trying to keep our stomach tight. We're trying to drive our hips back a little bit. We're trying to keep our back flat, and we're trying to force the knees out a little bit. Your knees don't have to necessarily be way out, but you definitely don't want your knees slamming inward as you're coming up out of the bottom of the lift. So if you just watch Katie do another squat here. She's going to do one where the knees are kind of caving in. This is very common. Knees start to come inward of the foot, and that is a very, very dangerous position of the knee. So you have to continually teach yourself to try to force your knees out, and not only force them out, but keep them where they're at. So she just wants to keep them in line with where her feet are the entire time. Some of you that have a problem with that, you can go and rack it. Some of you that have an issue with that, you can use a product like the hip circle, which I have, and you can work on building up your hips to be a little bit stronger. You can also just cue yourself to force your knees out. Another option would be to play around with your foot positioning. If your feet are way out like this, God, I'm sweating. Look, just ball sweat just dripping all the way right down to my legs. How gross is that? Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. But that's going to be tonight, after the piles of meat that we eat. Anyway, sometimes people have their feet pointed out excessively and their knees will cave in. This ends up being a really crazy looking position. So something to solve that is just to try to bring your stance in a little bit and just have your feet be a little bit more forward. Then if your knees are still in, they're less in than where they were before. So you don't want your knees to really be shooting inside of where your feet are. Those are just a couple things to remember about the squat. I could take about 2 or 3 questions and then we got to cruise right into the bench. Anybody have any questions on the squat? What do we got?
What are some ways you can improve if you do it sumo?
Sorry, what's that?
What are some ways you can improve? Like what you've been mostly talking about is for a conventional squat, but what if you sumo?
Oh, you mean if you go with a wider stance squat?
Yes.
Well, wider stance squat wouldn't look all that much different. Let's have Katie demonstrate. All the principles are the exact same. It just may be a little bit more difficult for some athletes to get their knees out to where their feet are. If you cannot get your knees out to where your feet are, then your stance is too wide. But Katie is super athletic and very strong, and so it's really not difficult for her. But for some of you guys, you might find once you start going really wide, you're like, oh shit, what's going on with my hips? I feel like you're getting split in half. Also, just some sumo deadlifting and bringing down the sumo deadlift. When you're doing a sumo deadlift, having a little bit of an eccentric portion to that sumo deadlift with really, really light weights can help open up your hips a little bit, help open up your groin, open up your taint for some of these wide stance squats. Also, to build up a wide stance squat, you got a box squat. Can be phenomenal. I would suggest box maybe slightly above parallel and then working your way downward over a period of time. Any other questions on the squat? What you got?
I mean, Mike, you get out of the hole really, really fast. I mean, you have like no delay from the bottom. Do you have any tips to get stronger from the bottom position?
Yeah, explosiveness is going to be 2 major things in the squat. Obviously, pause squat and getting in an uncomfortable position helps. Often people can't get that reversal power, so hanging out in that with a little bit lighter weight. Also remember that was maybe 70-80% for me, so it moves a little bit faster than obviously a max would. The other thing is just speed work. 50 to 70%, depending if you're using some accommodating resistance bands and chains. You don't need those, they do help. They're good to throw in here and there, or you can just go straight weight. Same thing, sets of maybe 3, 2, and 1. And just working on speed and form. The better your form is, the faster and lighter everything goes.
Keep in mind when you're doing speed work that you're also working on your form. You're also working on your technique. You're not trying just to blast the weight up. we'll have Katie just demonstrate, do a speed squat, and after that I'll have her demonstrate what a pause squat would look like. So a speed squat, just because this is 135 and she can squat a lot more than this, doesn't mean she's going to lift like a crazy person. So all she's going to do is just try to accelerate the weight up a little bit faster than normal. That's all she's really trying to do. Try to apply some force to the bar, but the form is still flawless. Here's what a pause squat would look like. You can pause in different positions, but here's one from the bottom. What we saw Mikhail Kokulev and Boris Shako do is they did a clap, so she gets all the way to the bottom, and he would just clap. She would come up, or he'd have her stop halfway down. He'd clap, she'd go lower, clap, boom, back up, stuff like that. You can rank it. Whenever you have an opportunity to make a lift a little bit harder, it's actually a good thing. And you can use that quite often in your assistance work. Think about that for a second. Where do we make lifts harder? What are lifts that can oftentimes be a little bit more challenging or a little bit more difficult or force you to use less weight? Stiff leg deadlifts, right? After we deadlift, it's very common for people to do a stiff leg deadlift. You use less weight, hopefully. Your form isn't so wild that you use more weight when you do a stiff leg deadlift. A lot of times we use less weight when you do a stiff leg deadlift. Something like a pause squat would be another case. A front squat is an assistance movement. A lot of times we're going to be using less weight when we do that. Same thing a lot of times with something like a close grip bench, or some guys will go wider bench, or even something like dumbbell presses. You might be able to handle some heavy dumbbells, but really they're still quite a bit lighter than you're actually handling with a barbell. Question?
So when you talk about speed work and you like to have like 50 to 75% of the bar, is that with the accommodating resistance, or just the bar weight, just like throw a few chains on there? Or how do you go about adding resistance?
The easiest thing to do is to, in your head before you get to a training session, is just to kind of have an idea of what type of weight you're going to use for the day. Whenever you're talking about bands and chains, I always think it's just easy just to say, I'm going to feel 50%, just see what that feels like, and then I'm going to go from there. 50% is obviously going to be way too light for most of us. If your max is like 300, you'll have 150 and then maybe some chains or bands on there, and that just probably isn't going to feel like a whole lot, but you can do a set or two with it and get an idea of what it's supposed to feel like. And then from there, just make 20 or 30 pound jumps until you get to a weight that you feel that you can not only move fast, but is giving you a challenge. Again, anytime you have a chance to make something a little bit more difficult, it's a good thing. So with your speed work, Jesse Burdick has a saying for speed work that we're working on
form perfection and force production.
and we can also work on our conditioning at that time period. So we can go every minute on the minute, like the CrossFitters do. We can steal from them. How great is that? They've come up with some awesome concepts, and now we can steal from them. They're stealing from us. One big happy family. But workouts like that can be really, really demanding. You might look at it on paper and just say, oh man, I'll only squat 60% of my max, for 10 sets of 3, but every minute on the minute, it's going to get to you after a while. Maybe it's without a belt. Again, anytime you have a chance to make the lift a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult, it can be a good thing. Don't take that to the extreme, but it can be a good thing.
What exercises can you do to improve your mobility in your ankles?
Oh boy. So this isn't a mobility seminar, so I'll refer you to mobilitywod.com. That's my boy Kelly Starrett. He's got tons of great information that goes way over my head. He's all doctory and stuff. But really, when it comes to the squat, bench, and deadlift, and you're talking about mobility for those things, where your mobility needs to be on a scale of 1 to 10 is probably fairly low in order to do the lift as it needs to be done in competition. So how flexible do your ankles, hamstrings, and hips and so on need to be for a powerlifting meet? I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 6, yeah. Right? Maybe a 7.
Yeah.
And if you just execute the lift properly over and over and over again, hopefully it will get you into better positions. For myself, going from geared powerlifting a few years ago and making the switch over into raw powerlifting, some of the specialty bars and also Olympic lifting shoes helped me squat below parallel. You can also do something like this And again, this is not really exactly answering your question because I would never actually answer someone's question directly. That would hurt my integrity. But you can just push a weight out in front of you and squat down low. And it's gonna help you see how much deeper she's already getting than what she was doing with the barbell on her back, just because she has a counterbalance. This isn't necessarily a stretch for your ankles, but it's a stretch for your ankles. And especially in terms of powerlifting, in terms of doing what we're asked to do in competition. Does that help or does that suck? Okay, good.
I'll help you out.
Little both.
I would grab a voodoo band from Rogue Fitness, and you gotta wrap your ankle, and also you need to address your calves. Remember, guys, your calves are
hurts.
actually what go ahead and they grab the heel of your foot, and that starts to kind of your foot's here, calf coming up here. It's gonna actually start to move everything up here. So if you're having foot problems, you're having ankle problems, your calves probably suck. So you need to address those calves just when you get in here. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to address it for a huge amount of time. Spend 2 minutes on each side. Just put a ball in there or roll in a foam roller. Wrap it around with the voodoo band. Move a little bit. You should be fine. And if you're having excessive problems and you're wearing Olympic lifting heels, squat in flats, because that's, while it will help you hit depth and it may help you hit heavier weights, it's also a way to cheat. And it's actually, if you're wearing heels, obviously everyone stand up a little bit like they're on heels. Everyone feel their calves get a little bit tighter?
Yep.
Okay, now do that for about 3 hours. How are your calves gonna feel? They're gonna be tight? Probably, okay? So you just gotta think about those things, what you're wearing, what you're doing, and how that's gonna go ahead and transfer over to everything in your life. So if you're wearing heels, try flats every once in a while, address it with a ball, get some voodoo bands. I mean, not in your personal life heels, I mean squatting, of course, right? We're talking the same language.
Yeah, just like you said, you wrap your leg up and move around. You can just do the movement that she was just doing here. A couple sets of squats and you should be good to go. We're gonna move on to the bench because we don't have a whole lot of time for much else. So here we go. So in terms of the bench press, people always try to complicate these different movements, and they act like these movements are all separate from each other.
Oh,
Oh, he's just gonna throw it away.
yeah, I was just gonna.
Yeah, he's just gonna take the money out. These lifts are actually more related to each other than anything else. The things that we're trying to do are very similar. We're trying to find a position that we can handle. He's trying to find a position that he can handle. His positioning is going to look a lot different than my position. Everyone's going to be a little bit different on what they can actually do and what they can actually perform and how they can actually lift in those different positions. And we're just trying to maintain those for a few seconds while we do the lift. So try not to make it seem like this crazy hard thing. Everyone always wants to talk about leg drive and all these different things. I benched 515 before I ever heard anything about leg drive. Bill Kazmaier had the world record bench of 661 for years, and no one was talking about driving the weight with your legs. No one was talking about tucking your elbows in. I don't even think he cared about tucking his elbows in. He just kind of went right out here and threw it up. So all we're really trying to do is find a position that's comfortable for us. We're trying to ride that out for a long period of time and not get hurt. So here's what we're going to have Jesse do here. You want to try to develop a little bit of a routine each time you do a bench squat or deadlift. What we like to kind of preach at super training is to just lay down flat. Just lay down completely flat when you first start. That way you know what the worst position would be to bench press from. He's just flat as a fucking pancake right here. Kind of looks like a pancake.
Thank you.
You guys know, this is a good fact, Jesse Burdick's nickname is Megamind. Have you guys seen the size of his head? He was trying to wear a, Katie, what was he wearing on his head?
Size this?
Yeah, besides that, what did he have? He had like a,
It's on like the last.
he had like a sweatband on or something earlier. It looked like a compression cuff on his head. Just cutting off all the circulation to his brain. So we want to try to find a grip that's comfortable to us. Some of you might like a closer grip, some might like a wider grip. I don't really care, it's your life. Find this thing that's comfortable and ride it out. So he's gonna go pinkies on the ring here. And now he's gonna go from flat to slightly arched. And we're really looking at trying to arch the upper to mid back, and we're not trying to do much of anything with the lower back. The lower back will get arched a little bit anyway. We just had a mutant walk in the house right here, this guy over here. What did you just total in your last meet? 1970. Outstanding. 1,978 pounds raw. Pretty unbelievable. What was the breakdown of that?
695 squat, 523 pounds, 760.
God damn, that deserves a round of applause. That's some serious shit right there. That's somebody who's really taken their time to learn their craft. And how does he get better? Now he's fucked, right? Now he's got to really buckle down and try to really learn how to push himself to that next level. It only gets harder, buddy. You're screwed. So now what we're gonna have him do is, you saw him kind of wiggle his shoulders into place. We're gonna unwrap the bar a little bit for him so he doesn't untuck his shoulders from where they are. He's gonna bring the weight down towards his sternum. Some people may like to bench a little higher than where he has it. Doesn't really matter a ton. But we want to try to bring the elbows into the side a little bit. We're trying to have the elbow be underneath the bar, and we're trying to keep the wrist straight. You don't want your wrist back, and you don't want your elbows way in on your body. So you want to be in a good, strong, powerful position at the bottom, and it should look like that right there. Notice he's bringing his head up. That's fine. Some people like to lift their head up when they bench press. Not a big deal. We won't call the police on you. It's okay. You won't go to jail. But this is a good, strong, powerful position to throw a punch from, to bench press from. Having your elbow in close to your body like that. He's got his forearm resting on his bicep. His tricep is resting on his lat. He's got good compression. He's going to be able to produce a lot of force from that. A couple more. All right, bracket. Where's Silent Mike go? Do you retire? Silent Mike! Hop in here for some bench pressing, buddy. I just like you guys to see some different body types doing it, because if you only see a couple different, you can only see one or two people do it, it's just not the same. So you want to see some different setups. So first thing, Mike already did something different than what Jesse did, and it's important that you guys are paying attention. I'm glad you guys brought this up and that you're paying attention. Mike already set himself up back beyond the bench press already. Mike is like a whole head length above where the actual bench press is. And why did you do that, Silent Mike? What's wrong with you?
I'm gonna try to coil myself up and get my back a little tighter.
So he's doing this to try to make himself tight. Let's see what happens here. You do that again? You're a little too quick, Silent Mike. These people can't pick up on it. Slow it down. Yeah, he's trying to take those shoulder blades and kind of tuck them into his back pocket. And now he's got his rib cage up. Oh, so weird. His rib cage is up. His back is flat. He's got his rear delts tight. Is that a little similar to some of the stuff we saw on the squat there? A lot of these things end up becoming more relatable than you would think. So when you go to hand the weight out to him, take the weight out of the rack, and it's going to look like EA. Very similar in form. Elbows are coming in a little bit, not over tucking the elbows in. And you want to try to push the weight. I know some people say in a straight line. That's actually wrong. With the exception of people that can arch, you can rack it. With the exception of people that can arch really extreme, I've seen some of those people be able to actually push the weight straight, and that works okay for them. I've seen some world records broken that way. And then also in the case of people that are just enormous. People that are 330, 340, 400 pounds, those guys are able to get their stomach up to the bar, and they're able to kind of push in a straight line. But other than that, the rest of us need to push up and back towards the neck a little bit. As you're going to press the weight, I'll show you what my bench press looks like a little bit. It's very impressive, 135-pound bench press. I just think that if you are to bench press with your elbows out, that there's really nowhere else to go as you go to push off the bench. Once you get to here and your elbows are already out, you see many failed attempts here. Sometimes you'll see people get like a second or third wind almost, and they'll push and they're still stuck here because they never had their elbows under them in the first place. They never had, I hate to even say the word sometimes because it confuses people, but they just never had their lats in the movement. Their back wasn't really part of the movement, and their back wasn't part of the movement because they never took the time to really bring their elbows in close to their body. If your elbows are out here, you're just more exposed. Your shoulder is more exposed. Your body is not making as much contact with itself. You think about a closed stance squat. Someone does a closed stance Olympic squat and they dive bomb it. Why does anybody squat that way? It's to kind of rebound off their own body, right? That's what they're trying to do. And sometimes people that are a little bit more comfortable with a close grip bench are trying to do the same thing. Now, I'm not saying everyone should do a close grip bench. What I'm saying is everyone should at least bring their elbows in a little bit so you can get compact and have that coil to be able to push the weights up. When you have your elbows in, you want to gradually throw your elbows back out. You want to actually purposely flare your elbows outward a little bit. So you want to throw your elbows out and you want to actually push towards the rack a little bit. I know that sounds retarded because you're like, and Jesse actually had somebody just dump the weight right on their face before, but with the exception of somebody like that, the weight is always going to act as like a counterbalance. So sometimes it may tell you something weird, like, oh, fall back in your deadlifts. We're not really saying fall back, we're just saying the weight is going to kind of counterbalance you. You're going to feel like you're falling back, but because the weight's in your hands, you're not going to fall backwards.
I think an important key that that I hope everyone heard when Mark was talking about, when he's talking about finishing his elbows out, the only reason he can finish throwing his elbows out is because he's starting with them in. If you start with your elbows out, you're already done. So if you start your elbows in, you're going to find your way to kind of throw them out. Does that make sense to everybody? So you want to start where you want to finish. Obviously, he would like to just finish here, but once it gets heavy, he's going to need to get here and start to open those elbows out once he gets there. You have somewhere to go. You have one more thing, one more gear to kind of find.
I like to lay completely flat and be relaxed. Even on some bigger benches I've done, I like to just try to relax for a second and make sure that I'm actually going to like breathe. Because a lot of times when you go to do a big lift, you just kind of psych yourself out and you freaking lose track of what the hell it is you're doing. I like to try to make sure my feet are even, but I got like a hip thing over here on the left side, so it never quite works out that way. And Silent Mike tells me every workout. Jesse's been telling me for a couple of years I look retarded, but anyway, I try to have my feet even. I'm also trying to push my knees out. I'm also trying to drive some energy this way the entire time, which I'll show you once I lock my shoulder blades in. And get my shoulder blades locked in, and now I'm pushing towards Jesse, and my elbows are in. And I would never really unrack the weight myself, occasionally in training maybe, but I'd rather have someone hand it to me so that I can stay in this weird, funky position to actually bench press it. Yep. And take the weight here, and then I always like to kind of almost drop the weight. I like to kind of run away from the tension, come in here, bring the elbows in, and then throw them back out.
So I think Mark does this better than almost anyone else. Lats on, very, very tight. Elbows are in, but not completely in here. And it's a very tight position. His elbows right underneath his wrist, and he's able to shove his heels down, which activates his shoulder blades.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite stories about Mark is when he was doing geared benching. What is your best bench?
Oh, I did like a 925.
And when you were doing that,
just
when you're
in training.
bench in the meet.
Oh, 854 benching.
And when you were benching 854, 854 in your hands coming down, okay? Take a second and think about what you might be thinking about with all that weight in your hand as it's coming down, okay? Now, hey Mark, what was in your head when you were benching all that weight?
Just push my knees out, drive my knees out.
So does that correlate to, what's this called, a squat? Is everyone starting to kind of get how all this is going to go ahead and carry over from one lift to the other? These concepts that we're talking about, tightness, knees out, shoulder blades together, chest up, rib cage up, right? These are going to carry over from one movement to the next. These aren't just specific to one thing. This is a movement theory that goes across the board in strength sports. Everyone cool with that? Does that make sense to everybody?
Have Silent Mike line up on the bench here again. One thing I forgot to mention, kind of part of the reason why I was thinking about SpongeBob SquarePants and forcing my knees out was the number one thing on a bench, well not the number one thing, but a huge key to the bench press is to have your knee lower than where your hip is. Have your knee, you guys fucking writing this down? It's gonna be on the test. I hope you brought a number 2 pencil. Everybody's getting a little nervous, like really? There's gonna be a fucking test? Fuck. Fucking A. No, there's test involved, but it's not that kind of test. So the knee is below the hip, and he's got the rib cage up. When the knee is below the hip, you're able to have the rib cage up. If he's all tight in the hips, he's gonna kind of drop his rib cage. We see a lot of people doing this. And I keep telling people over and over again, I'm like, dude, you gotta do something about your hips. You gotta stretch your hip or something. Look up a couch stretch on fucking YouTube or something. Get your hips to open up at least a little bit. If you want to lift more weight, you might have to do some shit that you'd never want to do, that you've never wanted to do before. You might have to go back and take your time and do a bunch of weird stuff that you just never thought you would ever do. You know, you might have to roll on a fucking foam roller. You might have to stretch. You might have to take care of your nutrition. You might have to go to bed at 9 p.m. You might have to do some things that you're not exactly happy to do. You might have to wake up early and start your meals for the day. Eat 7 times a day, 8 times a day, 9 times a day. You know, there's some luxury to this. There's some fun to all this. You definitely get a chance to pound some ice cream here and there and some things like that, especially being a strength athlete. But there's going to be some times. I know Jesse does a great job, but Jesse and I have been lifting for a long time. Silent Mike is always taking his time to actually warm up, to actually get a sweat going before you start your training session. You don't always have to do that, and you don't have to always be a pussy. You don't always have to be that way. You can go in there and say, you know what, fuck this. I hate everything. I'm just going to lift like a motherfucker today, and I'm going to go home. You can do that on occasion, but if you just continually do that and you don't take care of the problem the next day or the day after that, then you are not going to get better. And in my opinion, you're not a true powerlifter. Because if you care about it that much, it should matter to you enough that you're doing everything in your power to get yourself stronger. It's not enough just to be strong in the weight room. I wish that was the story. I wish I could tell you guys go in and train for 45 minutes, 4 times a week, and that's it. And hey, here's the workout. I gave it to Bart. Bart's gonna give it to you. Bart's gonna charge you $280 for it, and give you a free Barbell Brigade shirt with it, and you're gonna get better. But it does not work that way. There's a lot of work that has to happen outside the gym. There's a lot of work that has to happen before you start your workout. And I know a lot of you guys care about this a lot more than just showing up at the gym and training. People always talk about pre-workout. You know, you think you have a pre-workout a half an hour before your training session. Well, if you're really a strength athlete and you're really into it, your pre-workout starts the week after you finish the lift that you want to get better at. So if you just did a bench workout, if you just finished your bench workout and it sucked, what are you thinking about?
Benching.
You're thinking about benching. How do I fucking get better? That's your pre-workout right there. It starts right there. It starts 6 days, 7 days in advance. It starts way ahead of time. The thought process, how do I get better? You start texting people, start calling people, start pulling your hair out. you start kind of losing your mind, and you get to a point where you kind of think that everything, you know, a lot of people in this room, I'm sure, have been in this boat before. A lot of you have probably been down this path where you just think that everything you're doing is wrong. And maybe it's not even in the gym, maybe it's in school, or maybe it's somewhere else, but it happens to us all. Don't get too sidetracked by any of that. Don't get too overwhelmed by that. Don't be like, oh my God, Mark Bell said I gotta do 25 different things to get better at bench pressing. That's not necessarily the case. The case is that you just have to make sure that you leave no stone unturned in your training. Make sure you just stay on top of as much shit as you possibly can. And there really is no excuse about going to school or having a job or having kids. I got all that shit. So does he. So does everybody else. We all have problems. I got a guy in my gym with one leg. You know, the motherfucker lost his leg last year. He's in there training. He's in there getting better. And he just said, I just want to be stronger. I want to be better at bench press. He's in there training. He's in there lifting. Met another guy today. Same thing. Lost his leg 5-6 years ago. He just wants to get stronger. He's like, I don't give a shit. He's like, this happened to me. I'm gonna deal with this. The only way I can deal with it is just to keep pushing forward. How different is that from anybody in here? That is a very unfortunate thing that happened to those guys. It's really brutal. But we all have brutal shit that happens, and we all have to keep forging forward and really working hard towards getting better. Are there any fucking questions on the bench press?
When I bench press, I have trouble placing the bar on my chest.
Oh
I don't
my
know if
God.
it's below or above the breast or
Well,
right across.
You just kind of, the bar touches in a different spot each time type deal?
No, it's actually on the same spot. It's actually bruised at this point. It's just
Yeah.
my boobs right here. So my question is, should it go above, below, or where exactly?
Okay, the question is, should I bench press off my nipples or not? It really depends on where your nipples are ending up. That might have to do with your age and your bra size. Yeah, you know, I've seen some, you know, anyway. You're gonna wanna find what's comfortable to you. That all has to do with, and we'll just unload the bar here and we'll actually watch your bench press if that's okay. We'll be staring at your boobs the entire time.
I'll do it wrong.
Yeah. It all this depends on how you arch. The more that you arch, probably the lower the bar is going to look on your body. The less that you arch, the bar is going to look like it's touching up higher on your body. But really the key is to try to maintain some consistency on where the bar goes. Oh, keep going, a couple reps. I know I'm embarrassing you. Don't worry, I'm an embarrassment to everybody. So let's do a couple things here. Let's give me the weight here. Okay, stay where you're at. Put your hands outside of my hands. Yep, you can rub on my hands if you want. There we go. Hey now. Okay, so I'm gonna hand the weight out to you. Here we go. And now I want you to bring the weight below your boobs towards your sternum. Right, oh, right there. And then elbows in a little bit, not too much. Right there, now press up. And push up and back, oh, yep, good, do it again. Push up and back towards your chin. Good, up and back towards your chin. Good, right there.
Go up first.
Yep, up.
There you go.
There you go.
Nice.
It's already looking a lot better. One more thing we gotta fix. Stay where you're at. Slide up towards me a little bit and flatten out. Okay, now pick yourself up and then tuck your shoulders underneath you. Keep them right there. Okay, ready, go. There we go. Do 5 reps that way. There we go. That's good. Oh, you're hitting the rack a little bit. It's okay, one more. You want to go right there. There you go. Good. Good. That looked good. I mean, I don't know how'd that feel. Feel like shit?
It feels better just because I don't have that discomfort on my breast.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Stop hitting yourself in the boobs.
How do you work on getting that arch in? Like, you said it's really important when you're benching to get that arch in, but I've got little to no arch when I'm on the bench. I'm almost completely flat. And
So when you're talking about trying to get an arch on the bench press, really the conversation is we are trying just to do 2 things. We're trying to get more stability, trying to be more stable or as stable as possible, and we're also trying to shorten the range of motion. I've seen a lot of people just continually arch and they just keep arching and arching and arching, and it's not doing them any good. They're not shortening the range of motion any further, and they're actually becoming less stable. So arching, it can be really important. It's kind of a back and forth battle between some guys that arch really well and some people that don't arch at all in terms of who has the world record in the bench press. Kirill Sergeyev, a Russian lifter, is probably on track to break the all-time bench record. But he's just so mobile through his sternum that I just don't think most other big guys are ever going to be able to arch that way. And that might be an advantage that he has that no one will ever be able to overcome. But Eric Spoto currently has the world record, 722-pound bench press done at Super Training Gym. He's got a pretty good arch. He has awesome technique and awesome form, but he's only arching from the mid to upper back. In terms of just trying to increase that mobility a little bit, I would work on it on the bench press as much as you possibly can, especially with the lighter weights, and also just trying to roll it out, foam roll it out. Just try to work on some different mobility drills for the upper back. And just again, I always like to refer to Kelly Starrett because he's got so much information online. Kelly has the what's the butt plug? What's that called? It's not the Gemini. Kelly Starrett has a product online called the Gemini that you can get off of Rogue Fitness, and that is specifically made to kind of roll out the thoracic spine. It'll catch your erectors and not actually roll on the bone of your spine. So something like that would be really awesome. Just lay on it for a few minutes at a time. You can roll on it a little bit, and that'll help quite a bit.
And just to emphasize again, he's talking your upper back. That's where the biggest part of your arch is going to come from, not your lower back. Good?
And you also, I don't want to say that the arch is not important, but what is really the most important thing is just that your shoulder blades stay down and back. So it's not really about just trying to create this huge arch. It's more about just trying to stabilize your shoulders and keeping your shoulders like under you. Let's see you do a bench press. Just throw a 45 on there. Sound okay?
Sounds great.
If you hurt yourself, the name of the gym is called Barbell Brigade. So pinkies on the ring.
All right. I believe I signed a waiver.
Yep, there we go. Okay, now right away, you were just laying way too flat. So we got to do some stuff with your hips. We got to try to get your feet out a little wider. Okay, we got to get your feet underneath your body a little bit more. Maybe out a little wider again. There we go. Now that already sucks, right? It hurts. Started feeling your hips and stuff a little bit. Okay, so now pull your upper body up a little bit, and then bring your shoulder blades underneath you a little bit, right in here. And let's see what it looks like. 1, 2, 3, up. And now your legs should be tight the entire time. Legs should be flexed the entire time. You should be pushing towards me with your legs. Good. A couple things are happening here. You can rack the bar. A couple things are happening here. Because he's laying so flat, he's just getting a ton of rotation in the shoulder because he's just kind of like this. And then you look at where the guy's developed. Like, he has massive delts, which is cool, but they're almost overdeveloped because of the way he's sitting on the bench. He should be kind of back in here a little bit more. He should be able to kind of get into his pecs a little bit more rather than just his front delt, but he's kind of stuck in here. So what I want you to work on more so than anything else is just to get out of here. Always keep your shoulder pinned to the bench itself. And probably one of the best spots you can work on this would be with some dumbbells. You can take the dumbbells and you can kind of get down past that stretch point, but as you press, don't over press, don't go in here. You want to just press to here, right to there. Each time flexing your pecs. So let's have you do one more, and let's have you concentrate on flexing from here a little bit more. Bring your body back this way a little bit more. Okay? And now we want to get you on your trap. So pick your body up and then down that way. There we go. Up. I'm not a big fan of the false grip. I usually like to see people wrap their thumb around the bar. It's just kind of a safety thing. Atta boy. So if we're just going to lower him down, okay, right into where I want him to be, he'd be here, right? Elbows in here, a little bit less. Okay, and now press from here. There you go, good. Push your shoulders into the bench. Again, push your shoulder blades into the bench. Drive yourself into the bench. You're trying to push yourself away from the bar. Yep, elbows are in. Elbows are in more, in more, in more. Elbows are in more, that sucked. Right there, yep, good. Good, again. Elbows are in more, right there, yep. Your elbows should be on that side of the barbell, by the way. You're good. That's a lot better already. There's some improvement there. When you started, I was like, oh my God, what the fuck are we gonna do? All right, everybody help me with this guy.
So with foot placement, like heels on the ground or heels off the ground, is it just personal preference, or is there like a better?
Yeah, just, you know, if you're going to compete in powerlifting, check with the federation, whatever federation you're going to compete in, and make sure it's okay to have your, if you're somebody that likes to have your heels off the ground, you bench press. I don't think in the USAPL, which is the drug-tested powerlifting federation, in that federation has the most strict rules. I don't believe they allow you to bench press with your heels up. But all the other federations allow you to do either one, I believe, as far as I remember.
Yeah, I think whichever one that you start with, you can't go from your your heels onto your toes. You're just gonna have to grab it and stick. But it's gonna be an individual thing, which is gonna be mobility issue and just basically where you feel the strongest, where you're the most efficient.
Kind of kicking your legs back under you when you bench press is, in my opinion, kind of the equivalent of getting your arms in super close on a squat. It's like a decent way to just say, all right, well, here's how I fucking get tight. I'm just gonna wind myself into this weird position that is so hard to like get unwound from, you know? So if you just kick your legs under you for a bench press, it'll just kind of force you into an arch position. Sometimes it works great for people, and sometimes it's shitty. In my opinion, it can be really rough on your lower back, so just be careful of it. I'll tell you this too, the bench press is the worst exercise out of the three for your lower back. Now, some of you are just probably like, what the fuck's talking about? But I'm telling you, we are not designed to bench press. It's a made up movement. We're designed to squat for sure. We're designed to deadlift for sure. This is a completely made up movement. You're laying down, pushing some massive weights with both your arms pinned behind your back. So it is a weird movement, and especially with your legs down the way they are, I would suggest that everyone throws on a belt for most of their bench presses. It's helped my bench press increase over the years just by putting on a belt. I like to put the belt a little higher, just like kind of a more of a comfort thing for me. But I would suggest throwing on a belt when you bench press. It's just gonna help you stay safer. It's gonna help you when you go to deadlift the next day or two, or whenever you're scheduled to deadlift or squat. It's gonna help you recover from that workout. We're gonna move on to some deadlifting. How do we know where to stand? It's gonna depend a little bit on someone's mobility. So if you're not mobile, you're gonna be further away from the bar. If you are mobile, you'll be a little bit closer to the bar. But usually, I like to kind of see when you look down that the barbell is dead center in the middle of your foot or shoe. As he goes to line up on the bar, first thing we're trying to do is we're trying to get ourselves tight and get everything right before we even start to lift. So before he even goes into any downward motion, even though it's just 135 pounds, you always want to be respectful of the weight. You always want to try to organize your body for every single lift, every single rep, every single set that you do. So right here, he's thinking about kind of turning his feet into the floor, squeezing his butt, driving his hips forward a little bit. Just gonna have your feet turned out slightly. And from here, he's gonna think about organizing his body, getting his stomach tight, and reaching down and grabbing the bar. For us, we like to squat down just a little bit, and then mainly bend from the hip to get to the bar. And then we like to use the barbell to get ourselves into position as he's doing right there. 3 things we're trying to remember before he actually starts his deadlift. 3 things we're trying to remember. We're trying to keep our back flat. We're trying to keep our stomach tight. And we're also trying to get our hips lower than our shoulders. Hips lower than your shoulders is right there. And the 4th thing, the bonus one, the hardest thing to not have happen while you're doing a deadlift is try not to shit your pants. And the key word's try, because things happen, you know. Try not to blow out your O-ring is what I'm trying to tell you. And good luck with that. It's pretty simple. You bend down, you pick the bar up, right? But what ends up happening is people start to get obsessed with getting stronger, and they start getting obsessed with getting better, and they start sprinting before they ever learned how to walk properly. Really take your time and learn how to do the lift the right way. Jesse and I were lifting together the other day, and I was just watching him pulling the weight. We only had like 3 plates on there, I think. But I was just watching his form and technique, and watching that was almost more impressive. I've seen the guy deadlift 810 pounds or so before. 820 pounds before. And obviously that's crazy impressive, and it was nuts to see firsthand. But watching him taking his time and being more patient was also impressive, because that is really hard to do. It's hard to be strong. It's easy to be strong in here and just come in and get fired up and rip 400 or 500 pounds off the ground. And it's easy to be a savage and be an animal and get yourself revved up and really rip into the weight. But it takes a whole nother level of strength and discipline to really make the commitment to yourself to consistently try to get yourself better. And when you do the lift this way, I'm do about 5 reps. You do the lift methodically and correctly. It's not trying to impress you with how strong he is with 135 pounds. He's just trying to move the weight the right way. When he goes to do 225 and 315 and 405 and 500 pounds and 600 pounds, it's all going to look very similar to that. At some point, yeah, he's going to start to shake. He'll start to switch to an over-under grip. He'll start to get more chalk on his hands. He'll start to get a little more excited. Of course, there's going to be some variation in there. Again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the uncomfortable comfortable. And if you develop a routine and you develop a system, you can't go wrong, but you have to really try to take your time with this. You know, it's something that I have known for years, but it's something that has slipped away from me because I did a lot of geared powerlifting, and the geared powerlifting ended up sort of masking some of the little nuances of raw powerlifting. So we're gonna have them do a sumo deadlift. A lot of the rules for a sumo deadlift are similar. First thing you're gonna notice is the legs are out a lot wider, feet are out a lot wider, toes are pointed outward a little bit more. Always be a little cautious on this, on how wide you go, that you don't drop the weights on your feet, because that hurts. I've done it before. I've seen another athlete do that recently. Chris Candido did that at a USAPL meet because the bar is not super long, and he crushed his toes. So just be a little cautious with how wide you go there. You want to have the toes out, and all the rules are very similar here. Stomach's tight, back is flat, hips are going to be lower than the shoulders. For some of you, you're going to really want to work on trying to squat the weight up, for those of you that aren't very mobile. For some of you that are extremely mobile, you're going to work on trying to have a little bit higher hip position. Because we see some people that get so low that they can't really create any tightness from the position that they're in. They're in some weird frog position that just is not going to be effective for deadlift. Common mistakes with the deadlift are that the hips shoot up first and that the back will round over. Usually those two things go hand in hand. We see that quite often. The hips will shoot up and the back will round over, and it becomes a 2-part lift. The absolute number one way to get rid of that is to use less weight and to really try to do sets and reps in your training program that are clean and smooth and that are of quality. Like I mentioned earlier with the squat, when we're watching Katie squat and watching Mike squat, you want to have a little bit of deviation on your form, just a tiny bit, but there shouldn't be a whole lot. Your lifts should look pretty smooth. Another way to get rid of some of that is through your assistance exercises. Don't forget about your assistance exercise. I know it's very trendy and cool right now to bench, squat, and deadlift like 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Some people are squatting every day. And all that can be really effective, and a lot of those things have come from really, really great coaches. But unless you have direct contact with those coaches, I would suggest not even bothering with some of those programs. The assistance exercises are going to be crucial. Something like a stiff leg deadlift, a bent over row, all those things are going to be effective, and all those things are going to help you to stay tight at the bottom of the lift and not have your hips shoot up and not round over in the deadlift. I'm going to have Jesse just demonstrate a few more sumo deadlifts just so you get a little bit better idea of it. The last thing to kind of remember on any of these movements is just to try to pull your chest up a little bit. People ask us all the time about like the head, where the head positioning should be. That's going to be a little bit individual, but you want your back to be flat, you want your back to be neutral. And you, as you're coming up in the deadlift, you want to try to bring your chest up a little bit. It's the same in the squat, it's the same in the bench, it's the same here in the deadlift. The more postured up that he is, the more he's going to feel in his hips, the more he will build his hips, the stronger he will get. Another common question we get asked a lot is, how do you build up strength or speed off the floor? Strength and speed off the floor comes from training your lower back, making your lower back stronger. So you could do stiff leg deadlifts, you could do deficit deadlifts, and even something like a block pull, which would seem like would only work your lockout. A block pull, you can oftentimes, depends on the person, but oftentimes you can handle a little bit more weight on a block pull, and it's going to work your lower back by having a little extra weight in your hands, and therefore by working your lower back and making your lower back stronger, you're going to be more explosive off the floor. Does anybody have any questions on deadlifts?
When I get about 85% or above on my deadlift for like sets of 3 or 5 or whatever, my upper back, like I lose my lats like halfway through. I get them tight at the bottom, and on the way up it just starts to go. And at the top I have to pull them back to lock it out.
So a lot of times the way that you start the lift is going to be the way that you finish the lift. If Jesse can kind of line up on the bar here, this is like a buddy test. This isn't like me trying to impregnate him or anything. But if he can line up on the bar and get down for a deadlift, if you just get behind him and try to tickle his armpits a little bit, he should be able to lock his lats in to the point where I can't grab his armpits. So if you don't want somebody to tickle you that way because you feel too awkward about it, you can just have someone film you from the side, and you should be able to kind of bring your elbows down and back close to your body. It's so weird. Close to your... Starting to sound like that.
That does sound
yeah. Yeah, you want to try to have your elbows down and back in close to your body, just kind of like we mentioned on the bench press. Sort of like we talked about with the way that Silent Mike was lining up on his squats. You want to try to bring your elbows in tight to your body. And if you're never actually set up that way from the beginning, a lot of times you'll end up doing the lift broken. You'll end up getting rounded over, and you'll get up out of position, and you'll end up kind of rounding over the top. Another thing that is really important for you guys to embrace is a principle that I call lifting like shit. So if you get into these weird positions and you don't know how the fuck to get out of them, you can train yourself through them by just doing the exercise shitty with really light weights. So you could take a weight like this, and he could do snatch grip deadlifts, and even a snatch grip deadlift like on a deficit, and he can kind of intentionally be a little bit rounded over. And I'm just talking about really, really light weight, sets 10. Start with 135 pounds. I don't want you trying to lift real heavy like that. But another example of that would be something like a good morning. Somebody rounds over in their squat and they can't figure out how do I stay more upright in a good morning? How do I stay more upright in my squats rather? Try doing a good morning. Try to figure out, okay, well every time I come up out of the squat, I kind of go like this and I go like this. Well, why not start a good morning here and just start to try to figure out how do I stay straight the whole time and power my way through that? When I was doing the multiply lifting and trying to really push that, I did a 1,080 squat, but I was also able to do good mornings with like 6 plates and chains on the bar. So you have to build up a tremendous amount of strength to try to be able to hold and maintain these different positions. And for yourself, I would just try to find as many different things as you can that you think correlate to that. There's no like, there's really no like, nothing's out of bounds to try. Like he can just try like a wide grip bent over row. And if it's rounding him over and then getting him into this position, that's exactly what you're talking about. Don't forget how a lot of this started. A lot of these things started by people just picking stuff up and moving them around. A lot of all these lifts are kind of made up. a clean, a snatch. Some of the things are somewhat look like things that we do in regular life, but they're all pretty much made up. And you can kind of make up some of your own stuff to get yourself better at whatever positions that you are not lifting properly from.
I think something else that you got to think about is, I'm not sure everyone heard him, but he's talking about 85% and above, and his form is starting to go where he doesn't want it to. Well, that's what's going to happen when the bar gets over about 85%. So what's the easiest way to not lift like shit? Lower the weight. So if you lower the weight and you start to execute these lifts in multiple sets for multiple reps, you're more likely to not hit that as you go up a little bit higher once that ceiling starts to rise with you, okay? I think it's important for everyone to hear what Mark's been saying, is to take weight off the bar, execute things perfectly, but once we get over about 85%, it all goes to hell. If we're gonna be powerlifters, that's just what's gonna happen. And you need to allow for that. Obviously, I'm not giving you a permission to lift horribly, but I'm just telling you, have a little bit more of a base, and once you hit that 85, hopefully all the work you've done here, that will raise that ceiling up, so that'll help kind of move things around for you.
I have a question on grip. Like for deadlifting, what is like, I know everyone has their own preference. What do you recommend is the strongest grip for most people? I know, like for example, Magnuson, the world's strongest deadlifter, he does a double overhand grip.
No, he wears straps when he did those.
Yeah.
He goes over under for his world record deadlift. He was over under.
So, and like I know, like for example, like me, I don't have a really strong grip, so I kind of over grip when I'm going into heavier sets because I kind of slip a little bit. Where some of my friends that have stronger grips, they use more like a hook grip, and they just kind of lock it right there.
Okay, so that's not. This is technically the hook grip, kind of in like Olympic lifting standards. But what he's trying to understand, they're going to hold it a little bit lower, opposed to really, really deep in their palms. So that's what we're trying to differentiate. And for you, so let's just say this. Almost 99% of the deadlifts over 900 pounds have been with an over-under grip. There's only been 2 people, Vince Urbank and one of the Gillinghams, who's done hook grip over 900 pounds. So my suggestion to you would be go over-under if that's the way that you want to go. Having said that, I think it's great to train double overhand to get to about 60 or 70%. That's going to help you develop a better grip, not go to this right away. Also, just holding the deadlift once you're done for a while, just kind of hold it up here, even holding it here. Practice with really light weights going this way. And just work on getting your hands a little bit stronger. Holding stuff, you don't necessarily need to do a bunch here. You don't have enormous hands. You don't need to get thick hands. You just need to get strong holding. Does that help? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of problems with grip too are usually just problems with form. The lift is taking you too long. The lift becomes a 2-part lift. The next thing you know, the weight is shooting out of your hands. A lot of times people are not able to lock the weight out because they're rounded, and the weight will come out of their hands, or the butt will just shoot up in the beginning of the lift, and they're trying to figure out a way to grind it out. It takes too long. If you're trying to just train your grip and make it stronger, holding on to your deadlifts at the top is effective. Doing double overhand deadlifts is effective, and just trying to hold on to those for as long as you can. A good goal for a lot of you guys would be able to do like 405 that way. When you start to get a little stronger, maybe you can start to handle a little bit more than that. Other questions on the deadlift?
The hip thrust, is that the hip thrust? Like those your hips at the top? Is that, I mean, I don't. I come straight up and I keep it tight. Does that differentiate on the effectiveness of the deadlift, or is it recommended?
I think what she's trying to say is she's standing up straight as you go, opposed to kind of leaning back and going this way, and almost kind of hitting the bar this way, giving her something to feel, as we like to say. So what you got to think about here is the musculature that you're using. Musculature to stand up straight, you're just kind of going here. Okay, you're very rarely, you're going to have a muted hip sometimes. So what we like to try and teach is as you're kind of getting up, we want you to get your body behind the bar, and that's going to bring your hips through. You don't have to have this huge hip thrust at the end. As long as you're locking out the weight and you're going as heavy as you can and you're pushing your maxes up, then that's fine. But if you look at all the deadlifts, the heaviest deadlifts, people's third attempt deadlifts in competitions, no one's standing straight up. They're always back like this, okay? So if you're trying to stand up, oftentimes you're gonna, or you're not gonna be able to lock it out, or something like that's gonna happen. So getting behind the bar is going to help you kind of bring your hips through a little bit more at the top. Maybe you haven't hit that point. Maybe that's something for you that you'll feel a little bit more.
I try to make sure I'm putting my shoulders back on.
That's good. But if you're going like this and then doing this, okay, so if anyone ever does see that, be a good training partner and make that person kind of train their hips and their glutes, because by kind of shrugging around this way, you're not allowing your hips to kind of come
I
through.
just see some people do it more dramatically.
It doesn't have to be dramatically. Some people are
Yeah.
just dramatic.
You want to try to flex your hips early in the lift. It's important to drive your hips forward and get your butt into the lift as early as you can, because your butt can actually kind of help you protect your lower back. So it's important that you fire your glutes forward.
I love one. But you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a big thing. No.
Any other questions?
What's the difference in like sumo stance width? Like I have terrible mobility, and I used to sumo with like my feet all the way out, like touching plates, and then I kind of destroyed my hips. So I narrowed it a little bit. I feel more on my quads, and like maybe a little lower back, but like
Yeah, like how wide your stance is, whether you're conventional or sumo, is just a preference. How wide your stance is on a squat is just a preference. If you're fairly new, you haven't been doing things that long, try to find a spot you are comfortable in and work on that for a while. Try not to make things too complicated. Try not to worry about what you see someone do on YouTube, and try to just concentrate on what you can be good at. After a while, after a certain period of time, there's time and place to try different things. Maybe at the end of a workout, you're all done with your workout, you got all the work in necessary that you feel is going to get you better. At the end of a workout, a lot of times, or even after you do a contest, is a great time to start to experiment with some of your training and start to play around with some different methods and different techniques. So it's all preference. I've seen guys pull huge weights with a close stance sumo, and I've seen guys pull huge weights with a wide stance sumo. So for the way that you're built, it looks like you would be able to go pretty wide. It looks like you have kind of long arms, which can be a huge advantage. But just go with where you're comfortable for now.
And whatever's not hurting you too.
Yeah.
If it hurts to go too wide, bring it in.
Any other questions?
How much weights can when you lock up? How can you improve it?
Lockout improvement. So I mean, basically lockout, kind of getting stuck here, not able to pull through. Anything that's going to work your hips and your glutes. Something as simple as a bar here, just kind of top end, doing this. Block pulls, something along those lines. Anything, heavy kettlebell deadlifts, anything that's going to activate your glutes and your hamstrings.
A lot of times too with the lockout, it's the way that you start is going to be the way that you finish. So make sure that your starting position is crisp. If your back is slightly rounded over from the beginning, as you go to come up, you're going to be like here. Your back rounded, you can't finish the lift. It's very hard to stand up straight. So make sure that you're starting in a good, strong, powerful position. You got time for one more question? What you got?
An issue that I have is that sometimes my knees go in when I'm coming up.
You're off the team.
So what are some, I know that is your toes are slightly out? Is that what you're...
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that earlier. I don't know why she wasn't listening earlier. She owes us 20 push-ups. So with your knees caving in, whether it's on a squat or a deadlift, some simple ways to get rid of it are to try to video your lifts and watch it, make sure that that's not happening. Try to find weights where that's not happening. Try to find the weights that make it happen, and try to continually train with weights that are getting you close to that positioning, but it's still not quite caving in a lot. So, and a lot of times that's coming from your back and your hips too. So you got to work on getting your hips stronger. You can get a hip circle. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they have them here. I believe I have some items even for sale today somewhere. I don't even know where they went, but we have some slingshots and some hip circles for sale here. It's a great product to help strengthen your hips. Just cueing yourself over and over again to try to force your knees outward. Being conscious of where you stand. Have your feet a little bit more straight forward. See how it solved your problem right away just by having your feet straighter? With your feet out, a lot of times, you know, people's knees are going to kind of be inside of where their feet are, almost like their knees are like tied together almost. When your feet are straighter, your knees won't really appear to be that way. So you may want to try to train with your feet straighter. You may want to try to play around with the positioning of your stance. If you're out here and your toes are pointed out a lot, then when your knee is in, it's going to look really, really in and really twisted. The further out you are, the more the knee's going to look even worse, more worserist. When you take your foot and just put it in a little bit, and even if your knee goes slightly inward when your foot is straighter or straight-ish, you won't run into that problem quite as much. The problem is when your feet are totally straight, it becomes very difficult to reach depth. So you may have to play around with that a little bit. But really, you know, just try to find a position with your feet and try to find a position or try to find weights that are not making that happen, and do some repetitions, sets of 5, sets of 6, sets of 3. That's one thing for everybody here to keep in mind is we are powerlifters. We're trying to get stronger. We're always trying to get more strongerist. And sometimes by simply working on singles, we can get stronger because it's just kind of firing our motor units and just teaching us a certain pattern with some heavy weights. But the real way to build some strength is with either multiple sets of 1 or 2 and also multiple repetitions. You really have to try to go through those sticking points multiple times in a training session to make yourself stronger. So if your knees are caving in, or if your back is starting to round, or if your elbows are flaring out in your bench press, try to do 5 sets of 5 reps with a weight that doesn't happen at all, that doesn't show up at all. Try to find some value in that. Try to find some strength in doing that way. Rather than trying just to find strength in bench pressing 300 pounds, find strength in benching 225 properly for 5 sets of 5. Or try doing 10 sets of 3 in the squat with a minute rest without one hiccup in your squat at all. Try to take pride in that. Try to take pride in doing the lift the right way. I know I'm going to look on Instagram and watch some of your lifts, and you're going to completely have erased your memory from this day. And you're not going to listen to a fucking word I said, and your lifts are going to look like shit. But just trust me when I tell you that 95% of your training, 95% of your training should be pretty goddamn crisp. It should look good. You don't want people just to give you a bro pound every time you do a heavy lift. You don't want that all the time just for that. You want people saying, fuck man, that looked awesome. You kind of want that reaction too. You want both. But the more times when somebody says, holy shit man, that looked fucking clean. The more times you hear somebody say that, the faster you're going to advance past everybody else. I encourage all of you to compete. I encourage all of you to be competitive in here. Those of you that train in here, I encourage you to be friendly with each other, try to help spot each other, try to help load plates. Don't just throw your headphones on and sit in the corner. Try to get to know each other. Even when you're here today, I would like you guys to interact at least a little bit. We're all sweating next to each other. We're all smelling the same disgusting smells. Try to share something with each other. Try to learn from each other. Don't just come up to us fat guys over here. Try to learn stuff from each other. Try to encourage one another. If I see him lifting over here and he's doing squats, he's over here doing squats and I'm over there on the other side doing squats, and we're using like almost the same weight, you know, am I better off saying, well, you know, I'm supposed to do sets of 8 today. I should really follow my programming. Or would I be better off saying, hey man, I see you're doing some squats. Maybe I can work in and maybe we can fucking fire each other up. Maybe we can inspire each other to get better rather than just working apart. Let's work together. Does everybody understand that? I encourage you all to look for a powerlifting meet to go to. I encourage you all to find a powerlifting meet to compete in. And I encourage you all to kick a lot of fucking ass in your life. Take the lessons that you're learning from in here and try to apply that to your everyday life. People that train are just fucking better than everybody else. That's just the way it is. You're made out of something different. That's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to become. When you're training with weights, you are making yourself different than everybody else. You are separating yourself out from everybody else. It's not just a training process in here. If you have the strength and the courage and the ability to make yourself stronger, to go from a 200-pound deadlift to a 250-pound deadlift, then you have the strength and courage to do anything. That's it from me. Strength is never a weakness, and thank you guys for coming out.